To the show, folks, and we are live. Welcome to VOD Pod Media here on the east side of downtown. It is Tuesday, May 31st, your last day of May, June 1st tomorrow. We want to welcome everyone to VOD Pod Media right here on the east side of San Antonio. And if you are in Texas, if you're in San Antonio, if you're worldwide, you know about the incident that shook up the conscience, hopefully shook up the conscience of the nation in the globe just last week, the Uvalde incident, which was about 60 minutes west or so of San Antonio here. And we are heartbroken, sad, we are angry, we are all of the things over this incident again, as it's played out time and time again. Another mass shooting in the United States. We're so many days into 2022. And we've had over 200 mass shootings already nationwide. It's maddening, amongst other things. And so we had to have a show this week to dedicate the time to the victims, the innocent victims, many of whom who were 9 and 10 years old at a Uvalde elementary school. If you're watching this live right now, please tell us where you're coming from. Give us some thoughts. Share this post. You'll notice that all of the names and pictures are going to be scrolling on the screen of every single individual who lost their lives tragically about a week ago. And we had to dedicate some time to this incident to talk about the issues and to propose some solutions as well. We have a great panel that we put together for your viewing pleasure. And, you know, we like to have some fun. And so we're going to try to do a little bit of it all. We've got Mr. Manuel Maldonado here, who is a mentoring advocate in the city of San Antonio. He has a broad resume. We've got Mr. Gylan Jackson, who will join us here in just a bit, owner, founder, creator of VOD Pod Media, and Judge Rosie Speedlin Gonzalez, Bexar County Court of Law 13, if I'm saying that correctly. And we're going to have a special segment at the end to talk about where she got her outfit from tonight. Because she'll probably be the best dressed one here out of all of us. So thank you all for joining us today. Do we got any opening thoughts, any opening comments for our viewers?
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here this evening and speak about a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, right? And try to speak about solutions to the problems that we're facing right now, not only here in the state of Texas, but United States.
We got to figure it out. I mean, we've got enough brilliant people in this country to figure this thing out, propose some solutions. I don't know exactly what the answers is. Do we have all the answers? I don't know, but we got to try something. You know, we got to try. I appreciate you bringing here as well. So we wanted to bring good people to the table as well. We try to bring good people every week, but this one is something that hit very close to home. Something that continues to happen. It's happening in our communities in Texas. It's happening in communities nationwide. We talked a little bit a couple of weeks ago about the shooting in El Paso at a Walmart, where an individual drove from Dallas to El Paso, far west Texas, and killed, you know, however many people at a Walmart. And this incident as well in Uvalde, many of the individuals that were killed.
We can't forget Brooklyn.
Brooklyn as well, or
Buffalo.
Buffalo, the
New
incident
York.
that happened
Yes,
about a month ago, because the next one gets erased, and then our anger goes down, and then our ideas of what we're going to do goes to the next thing, and then it goes away to the next issue. And it's frustrating beyond belief.
It is. And we're almost getting desensitized to it, right? It's become part of our daily existence. And that's the bothersome part of it. And we need to continue to communicate with each other. I come from a family where my mother was a counselor, a therapist as her second career. My spouse, my wife, is Dr. Stacy Speedlin Gonzalez. She is a therapist and a counselor, an expert on trauma and addiction. And so we need to model for our community what processing can do to heal, what talking about it can do to heal, and where to go get it. They know where to go buy it. Why do you have to advertise for it?
We're going to talk a little bit more about Texas's affinity for guns, the country's love for this amendment that they hold so dearly to their hearts. I want to get into really quickly via the Texas Tribune, the timeline of last week, and I'm going to bounce around some questions to our panel today. May 24th, a week ago today, the shooter arrives at the school at 11:28 a.m. A few minutes later, he enters the school. He begins shooting at the school. Okay, so real quickly, why are people just in your mind taking guns or just grabbing guns, getting guns, and going to buildings and targeting helpless innocent people?
I think for that particular community, if you've driven there and other rural communities, it's real common to see in the center of town a gun sale shop, a store. And right in the same store, like you have in Uvalde, you have a sandwich shop, a cafe. And then right next there to that is Beer to Go, all in one establishment. It's ingrained in the culture. It's no big deal to just stop and go get a gun, pick up a sandwich, and hey, by the way, don't forget your beer on the way out. You're going to see that in hunting communities. And very much like you see in South Texas along the coastline. You're going to stop and get a sandwich and pick up some bait. You can pick up a fishing pole because you're going out fishing. Mm-hmm. And that translates into these rural communities where for decades, for centuries, having ammunition and having weapons is ingrained in the culture. That's why.
So why are people going into buildings and shooting schools generally? I mean, just throw some ideas out there because, you talk about Buffalo, we talked about El Paso. People are taking these weapons, assault rifles, and going to schools. We're going to talk about why schools, but other places of worship, malls, Walmarts,
I think
and
it's
just
a
shooting
desensitizing of our communities, especially youth. We have to look at, I was just talking about this to someone. I was giving persuasive speeches in middle school. This is in the 70s on how exposure of children to cartoons like Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry, which portrayed in cartoon fashion a lot of violence, if you think about it, and how children were repeating the behavior and how that type of exposure could lead to violent behavior in children. And when you have access to these types of video games that almost make a generated image look lifelike. Mm-hmm. And children are not getting out into the real world. They're not going out and having interaction with real people. They blur reality with fantasy. That's one. You combine that with a traumatized community where you have young people that have untreated trauma and they don't have the skills to learn how to deal with what comes with that trauma, that abuse. You have anger, you have shame, you have depression, you have anxiety, and they go to what's easily accessible to them. It's a combination of drugs and no way to regulate their emotions or impulsivity. And it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Coping or lack of how to cope with certain situations, right? Trauma, and then dealing with that trauma from inside, right? It is, when this occurred, right? I have 3 children, and my oldest lives in Austin, and every night make sure to call, say I love you, every morning text, love you. My son lives in Tampa Bay, do the same thing, and they're like, why do you call so much? You know what I mean? Yeah. I've got a freshman in high school, I love you, every day, right? Because you never know, right? But I think it's
what's the alternative?
Coping, right?
Yeah. That's what you say to. Would you like the alternative? Yeah. I'll never call you again.
Yeah.
I won't bug you ever again.
And my daughter, she's good with it. My son, who just moved to Tampa Bay maybe 6 months ago, I think he's starting to get it. My youngest, who's a freshman, we do, right? But it's something that when this happened, I immediately sent out text messages, right? Because you never know. No. I think going back to the question, it's coping. Why do these youngsters, and I say youngsters, guy was a high school student, was lacking the coping skills or whatever he was dealing with, right? To deal with it in a rational way, because it was totally irrational what he did, right? You got to think about, he didn't have anybody to go to, didn't have anybody to talk to, didn't have anybody to vent to, right? I think it's us getting, and I say us as adults, getting to some of these youngsters that we feel may have some internal issues, right, and trying to build relationships with them so they can communicate.
And-
We're
and
talking
this-
about
this is
communication, right?
This is an
Or
act of
lack
progression, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
Which what I mean by that is someone in this young man's life saw a problem with him, did nothing. Someone pointed it out to his mom, his grandmother, his grandfather. This young man has some issues.
Yeah.
Nothing was done about it. And then you layer on top of that, someone gave him those guns, or he sold him those guns. Someone sold him that ammunition. This was not the act of one person.
No,
This was
it's
a
community.
collaborative, collective act that led to this disaster.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about, selling things because, listen, for better or for worse, some would probably argue for worse that this is a country around that has engulfed itself in capitalism. And if somebody walks into a place of business with good, hard-earned money, they are going to sell them whatever the product is, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's guns, whether it's a Big Mac.
Yeah, but look, let's talk about alcohol because we've created a solution.
Okay, so
for
that's
that.
a good point.
And if someone goes into a bar and is served alcohol and then drives down the road and kills somebody, guess what?
That bartender.
Not only is that person going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter, they're going to go look at
The
where
server,
was he
the
before
manager,
this
yeah.
happened? What led to that level of intoxication? And then that establishment and that bartender may be held liable for having served that individual that led to lives being lost.
The owner as well. The owner of the bar
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So with that being said, let's go around, Guyland, pull you in. Why do you think certain legislation around guns, selling guns, when someone commits a mass murder, a massacre like happened last week, how come we don't have policies in place that are like these models to hold people accountable and as a community say, hey, this is wrong. We have to stop these incidents from happening.
Fear, false evidence appearing real. The fact that people think that they move to a gated community and they still need 20 guns, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you hear about the quote unquote violence in Chicago, this is all built on fear. This is not built on reality. This is a false narrative that's put out there by politicians. It's backed up by the media, and it's done over
and it's like
over
fear
and
of
over
what?
again.
Fear of me taking what you have.
Right, stuff. But don't you have insurance, Rosie? So if I take your shit, you're gonna get it back.
Yeah, but
in
I mean,
some way,
I don't
shape,
really
or
think
form.
we're living in a society like that. You
And
know
like
what I'm
what?
saying? Like that I'm going to come and take your stuff.
No, because crime is proximity based.
Yeah.
So that kid did what he normally does. Now the guy in Baltimore, was it Baltimore?
You talking about
2
the
weeks
Buffalo
ago?
incident?
Buffalo incident, that was completely different, right? He drove in. That's what you normally see in these white supremacists.
Well, just like he
shootings.
mentioned the guy from North Texas driving to El Paso.
Driving to El Paso to take out Mexicans, or the guy in Buffalo going in to take out black folk, or this guy, I feel there was a lot of self-hate, driving right down the street and taking out people that look like him because he was such in a place of pain that, and listen, and as we mentioned earlier, I don't want to make this like we throw all these people in this mental health bucket, right? Because it's beyond mental health. It's guns. It's lack of adults recognizing stuff. It's also $300 million was cut from the budget for mental health in
if it was
Texas.
mental health, give me the examples of all the interventions that have been successful with mental health services.
Right.
We don't have them because mental health services aren't being provided for the very reason that we have been gutted in the budget to be able to provide those very much needed mental health services and interventions.
Exactly.
So let's go back. I've got a question. Manuel, we'll start here.
Yeah, I want to go with Manuel because I know as a mentor, are you seeing what Rosie and I are talking about? Are you seeing those budgets being cut?
Definitely cut.
Okay.
Not enough funding, right, for the mentoring. I know that there are agencies out there that promote mentoring, and I think it's amongst young men and young women, because when you're dealing with a high school student, they're old enough to make those choices and decisions. But but you got to be able to reach out to somebody, right?
And-
I know I
and
can
you're
call
talking-
Max anytime I have an issue, right? I can call and just vent, or he can do the same with me.
And you're talking
right?
about
It's just communication.
one of the 12 resiliency skills that we talked about earlier in the Wolin and Wolin study. And that is the ability or the opportunity for a child to seek out one individual, one adult in their life. It doesn't even have to be related to them, that they can go to, that is consistent throughout their formative years, that will always be there for them without judgment. That's one of the resiliency skills that will help a child overcome whatever issue they may encounter as they navigate their development into adulthood.
Or try to navigate.
Or try
right?
to
Is what-
navigate.
So we're trying to lead, guide some of these youngsters that think they know everything because they're raising themselves, right? They're on the streets, right? They get themselves up in the morning, they get themselves to school. They're getting out.
They're
they
being
gotta find a way to
parentified,
get-
right? They're having
Yeah.
to take care of siblings.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely, right?
Yeah.
We've seen issues with virtual learning, right? Where high school students are having issues because they got to log their little sister and little brother on before they can get on.
Yeah.
Right. So it is not only them being the provider or daycare provider, if you will, but then trying to study on top of that. So mentoring, and Max knows how passionate I am about mentoring because there are a lot of teens out there that need mentors, especially within the past 2 years dealing with the pandemic. Social emotional learning has taken its toll on some of our students. I feel personally, and I've got a freshman in high school who is virtual for a couple of years, I think that they have lost a year to 2 years trying to learn virtually. And now going back into the classroom, they're having issues.
And
being
on
back
top
in
of that,
person,
you
right?
take away the social connection that is
Oh, yeah,
so
most
needed and imperative in the development of an adolescent. But if you talk to someone like Dr. Lulu, she's a local physician who
Amazing woman.
provides guidance and counseling to parents of the LGBT community. She and I have talked over and over again about the need. It's a philosophy. As an adult, I want to be for that child, for that teenager, the adult in their life that I needed at that stage in my life. That's my commitment to this community. And I think we just need to develop that philosophy in more adults and more of our peers and more of our family members and more of our relatives and friends, because the only way we're going to heal this community is from the inside out, because it's not going to happen from the outside coming in.
And so we want to heal, right? We want to provide solutions. You know, the difficult aspect of this is that we have seen this cycle on repeat, that we've had another shooting, another incident occur. One of the trends is, and I want to ask y'all why are people targeting schools, children,
Sitting
kids?
ducks. I mean, they have for lack of better words, a captive audience. You know, they know that children are going to be sitting behind a closed door, and they know from their own experience they're sitting at desks, focused on one side of the room, usually wherever the teacher is standing. It's easy pickings for them.
It's a shame.
Just like the movie theater in Colorado.
Yeah.
Just like the people inside the grocery store. Just like the people in the subway train. Just like the people inside the Walmart.
Yeah. The other question I have for you, and Gal, I'm going to ask you, why are these shooters nearly always young men?
Always young men. I don't know of a young woman that's
I can't recall.
as in recent. There might be somebody, but they're always men.
20-somethings, 18-year-olds.
We're not allowed to cry in society. Men are not. Men are not allowed to express themselves.
It's seen as a weakness, right?
Exactly. Men are not allowed to be vulnerable all the time. We have to be tough. We have to be strong. And any type of emotion after that, we are called gay. We are called all these other terms as if being gay is synonymous with crying.
Or weakness.
Or weakness.
Correct. Weakness.
Yo, talk about it. You know, and it has nothing to do with being weak, but these young men are really weak. And there's a lot of TV watching going on. You know, I don't want to be the one that blames the media. because I think we are the media.
Yeah, the media is a lot of different things.
Well, we are the media. When we stop and we scroll on something, we breeze by it, we become the media.
It's a culture. I mean, I grew up in a culture before cell phones, before microwaves.
Before YouTube. What did
Before
people do
YouTube.
before
I grew up
YouTube?
when there was only 3 stations on TV, and they were cut off at midnight.
I think we all three of us did.
You know,
Yes.
Maximo
ABC,
may not remember
CBS,
that, but we
NBC,
remember it.
and we knew there was no cell phones to track us. If we went. Our activity was on the bicycles.
Yeah.
Right. We went to the park and played basketball
neighborhood.
outside or touch football, and we had rules to follow. When those lights came on, those street lights, you better start heading home, because if you heard your name being yelled from the front porch, at that point you knew you were in trouble because you weren't home at the time you were supposed to be home.
Those were the good old days. I mean,
It's a different culture.
I used to ride from my home down to Ocean Drive, which is a few miles, right on my bike. No big deal. I wouldn't allow my kids to do that, right?
So-
Which is
It's
3-4
different.
miles. Because I'm not, and I always tell my children, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about the
other
others,
people, yeah.
right? And I grew up the same way, like, hey, stop crying, don't do that. Don't be a little girl. Don't,
Well, I grew up
I
in a
see it-
household where
I see
I
it
was
as a-
told by my dad. My
I
dad
was-
would hold me tight, and if he saw my chin shaking, he'd hold me tight, and he'd say in Spanish, "Mija no llora,"
Yeah.
because that was a sign of weakness, and he'd be damned if he was going to raise 2 weak children.
But as black and brown folk, I think we have to be real about that also. That's part of our culture.
Yeah.
We are raised to be stronger. We are raised to be better, because that sign of weakness will let somebody else come in and take what you have worked so hard for.
And it's interesting because as a parent, I think the issue is that you want your kids to be tough. You want them to be fighters. You want to be resilient and perseverant. And so you don't want to see them down. You don't want to see them sad. You don't want to see them crying over spilled milk. So you want to raise them to be tough. You say, hey, don't cry. Be tough. Button up your chin, that sort of stuff. I think it comes off misaligned because it shows, we didn't want you to be weak. Well, that's not really the case. It's okay to cry.
I see it as a sign of strength now to show emotion, right?
Oh,
I cry to my
absolutely.
kids all
It's
the
okay
time,
to cry.
especially when they make me upset. Like, look, you brought tears to me. Like I have no shame in crying or shedding tears now, and I tell my sons it's okay, right? Let it out. You have to let it out, because if you do not let it out,
the body keeps
it's
score,
gonna-
right? We
it's
know the
gonna-
body
it's
keeps
gonna
score. If it gets
explode,
internalized,
right?
it turns into long-term chronic disease. We have the general surgeon from California, Burke Harris, talking about what internalization of emotions can do to a body long-term, and how that affects communities generationally. Chronic disease. And so we've got to find a way to teach our children, our youth, our young people how to externalize the stressors they're internalizing. Otherwise, we're going to be an even sicker society and community in just 10, 20 years.
My daughter's working on her master's in holistic medicine, and she always tells me, right, Dad, you've got to clean your inside,
You do.
right,
You
so
do.
that you can be good on the outside, right? Let all of that bad go, whatever that might be, stress, right, whatever, right? Woosah is what she tells me, right? Find that chi, right?
Right,
You've got to
right.
be able to relax. You got to breathe, right?
I've gained
A lot
more
of times we
weight
don't.
now. Yeah, I've gained more weight now bigger than I've ever been. And I spend, because I'm getting to that point, and Maximo knows, like, hey, you're gonna be at the gym, and I don't come, but I'll get there, man.
You'll get there.
But the thing is like I spend so much more time alone, in silence, because I know I'm struggling right now with weight, and I know how easy it is, even when I wasn't, to say something rude or be rude. So I spend much more time. But that's
And
what
you're
we
an
need.
adult, right? You're an adult,
Right.
and we are all adults who have the ability to stop, reflect, and plan. This is how I want to approach this. Children they're not born with those abilities, and they're not being taught.
They're not being taught. About 10 years ago with my daughter was very interesting, because I remember her getting in the car and she said something, and we got in an argument, and she wound up crying. And it about 10 years ago. So I took a step back and I said, okay, what was this really about? Right. And then I realized, like, she got in trouble because I was tired. She was tired too, but I'm the adult.
Yeah.
And I think that adults need to start acting like adults and say, okay, go to your room for a few minutes. Let's talk about this. Let's take a time out. Not because you need a time out and you get in trouble, but dad needs a timeout.
Yeah.
And I need to sit with myself and understand what's really going on. Is it the first of the month? Is there a damn full moon out? Holistic. you know, what's going on? And I don't think that we take enough time to look
To
at
reflect, right?
to what's going on, because what was going on with those police officers?
So we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
At 11:33 a.m., the shooter breaches the school and shoots 100 rounds into classroom 111 and 112. 2 minutes later, 3 officers arrive at the school. They receive grazing wounds and then they retreat. Okay. A couple minutes later, 11:37, the guardman fires a few more rounds. At 11:50, more police arrive on the scene. At this point, these officers have tactical SWAT gear on. Okay, at 11:54, onlookers start filming with their camera phones, wondering why the police are not entering the building. I presume it was because of some form of policy with regards to if there's an active shooter, we do not enter the building.
You're being really nice.
Does anyone? No, and I mentioned
there's 19. There's 19. There's 22 names up there. 21 names up there. Scrolling by 21 pictures. Those cops were scared. They were weak, and they did not follow their protocol.
So with that being said, we know that anytime anyone offers any criticism over the police, people get hurt. People get upset. Now, with that being said, why is that? Why is it that public servants like the police officers are immune to any criticism anywhere?
They have a union. They're the only people that have the acceptable union, and the union.
I don't know
is
that
out
they're
there.
immune. I think
They want to be immune.
and they have immunity. I got asked this question when I earned the endorsement of the SAPD in my run for office, and they asked me about qualified immunity, and I said I believe in that for good cops. I don't believe that a bad cop ought to be able to use that to protect themselves from liability. And given the state of our societal affairs, everybody's wearing all their feelings on their sleeves. And I'll give you an example. I was before the Supreme Court last week on another issue, and the attorney for the Commission on Judicial Conduct asked me a question about how I would feel if a judge hung a flag with a thin blue line on it or wore a lapel pin. And I said, my point is that if they can do that, I want to be able to fly my pride flag and have a pride lapel pin on. There's other judges in our jurisdiction that wear camouflage robes, daishiki robes.
Are you serious?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know that.
And so he says, are you telling me that if a police officer came into your court, this was to generalize the question, you would not give him deference? And I'm like, I can't. That shows bias on my part, favoritism. That police officer would be a witness like any other witness. Why? Because police officers are human. And therefore, their veracity can be questioned just like any other witness. But people lose sight of those things. That's called due process.
But Rosie, when you have a pride flag, that pride flag shows unity.
Absolutely.
Right.
It shows equality,
It shows
inclusivity,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
The thin blue line does not. And I know you've been on the police review board. I respect all of what you've done. You speak out for the community, but I think we need to stop making excuses for police officers.
Well,
and we just saw what happened, and there's no both sides to this.
Okay.
The police have a job. It is to, in my opinion, it is to protect and to serve. Now we can look at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says it's not necessarily to serve, right? But it is supposedly what they have written on the side of the car is to protect and serve. When you have 19 officers out there holding back parents, and the parents are willing to run in there and get their kids, there's nothing else anybody. If Tiago, your son, what would you have done?
Yeah, we would have ran in there just like the other.
But the
parents
question
did.
really becomes, who do they protect and serve?
That's a good point as well. That's another subject as well. So why were the police standing out there? Is it because they were scared? Is it they had a policy?
So you look at Uvalde, right? It's never. I don't know of an incident happening this close to home like that, right? They went through training a week or 2 weeks prior.
Some of them,
some of them did, right? I don't think they were prepared. Personally, I don't think they were prepared, right?
Mentally?
I don't know if it was mentally, professionally, but it's like Max said, I would have gone in there too.
So then my question to you would be, I thought they had just had training.
Now, I don't know if it was all of them. It was like 100 people in the training class from what I remember. So I don't want to say every single one of them had it, but I know the chief did have it. I know the chief was in that training.
It
So-
just appears to me when you ask the question, why? Failure to act, right?
Perfect storm. Maybe there was a combination of
Failure
reasons.
to act.
So they look like they were underprepared. One of the questions I have for you later is, and I'll just ask the question later because I want to get back to this timeline. Right at 11:54, there are students that are calling 911 and they are saying multiple people are in this building, shot and dead. Get in here. Send the police in. Send the police in.
That right there
And
is
they are
all
not apparently coming in.
to act.
Between 11:54 and 12:19, at 12:19, the parents are begging police officers outside of the building to get in there and do something. Like, our kids are in there. You've seen some of the videos. These parents are wailing, crying, sounds that parents shouldn't be wailing. And they're desperate for their babies. These kids are 9, 10 years old. They don't know if their kids are alive or dead. Between 12:19 and 12:50, a border patrol agent somehow breaches the room and kills the gunman.
Okay, so is this an agent or is this
I don't-
a
Off
tactical
duty?
team?
No, this was
Remember we
one
talked about the
officer.
off-duty.
This was one officer. I don't believe he was on duty.
Okay,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's what I'm hearing. I haven't fact checked that. I don't know.
This officer entered the building like many other parents did between 12 and 12:50 to get their kids out of there. That's what I've read.
Maybe a
He
good
somehow,
guy with a gun did finally do something.
You know, and as you mentioned, you know, good cops, right? Perhaps this border patrol agent said, "Look, I don't care what the policies are. I'm getting in there and I'm going to stop this in my community." He felt a sense of community, whether he had students that went to school there or not, that I'm going to go in here and I'm going to stop this.
I know we were looking for solutions, but I want to say this, and we're hearing so many different things on the reports, and one of the reports was a tactical unit from the Border Patrol breached. One, where's all this information coming from, right? But two, we're seeing too many times that the police reports are not matching what's really going on in crimes in general. And so this is just kind of like one more of those. Listen, I'm not defund, I'm reallocate money into healthcare and some other things. I don't think we need police showing up with guns all the time. But if you want to be a police officer, we have to talk about this, the socioeconomics of Uvalde also. Where are the jobs? And are the jobs better now for Border Patrol and police? So you may not want to be a police officer. It may not be your dream to be a police officer.
I think I read somewhere that for Uvalde, the law enforcement component of their community takes up 60% of their budget.
So we were going to get there.
40% of their budget.
Yeah. So what I'm bringing that up, why I'm bringing that up is because police used to be this noble thing. You wanted to be a cop because your dad was a cop. It was on a beat. Maybe if your dad was killed and you thought, listen, he died doing the right thing.
Yeah, you thought there was some honor.
Exactly. That's the story. But now are people just becoming police because the benefits are pretty damn good? Is it just like another government job? It's really hard to fire government officials.
And you brought up, the fact that I sat on the CARB board, the Citizens Action Review Board, which reviews citizens' complaints and officer complaints on SAPD officers. And, it usually boiled down to a lack of training, poor reporting, inconsistencies in reports, a lack of information. Those were common complaints. And so we have to look at, do they need retraining? Or is this job not for them? And that's on a very low level, right? The report, rarely did we see a lapse that resulted in a death. I'm not saying we didn't, we did. But when you start to backtrack, where was that lapse in training? Was it a lapse in an interview that did not signal and bring up a red flag that this individual maybe should have not been hired to serve in law enforcement?
I don't know. You look at who was the first on scene, right? Is that school district police that's first on scene? Do they have the same training that Uvalde Police Department has versus Border Patrol? I don't think so personally, right? That's just me. I don't know that they do.
I read the active shooter training that they went through. So it could be found online. Somebody posted on Twitter. They highlight it. They failed one, not just from the standpoint of what we would do as parents, but even in the training, they failed. And the training says you go in and you just go in. There's not like, oh yeah, let's get all the, I watch way too much Law and Order now, right? It's not like let's be police shields and bang, 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 cops. No, you go in because you have a vest on, because you have a gun, and you eliminate the threat.
And I can guarantee you right now we have a viewer that's law enforcement saying, how dare you second guess us?
Of course.
We're the experts. We get the training. I'm not going onto your podcast telling you how to do a good podcast.
Sure.
I'm not going to your court judge and telling you how to be a better judge. I'm not going over to Mr. Maldonado's campus and telling him how to be a better mentor.
Sure.
So stay out of my backyard and I'll stay out of your backyard.
Very defensively.
Yes.
Angry.
But the thing is
I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just saying, right? Training, right, is key, right?
Well, yeah.
And you get hired to protect and serve, right? I don't know that. I mean, you look at the time lapse, right?
Yeah.
It's like Gonzalez said, you just go.
But you'll be
get called and
hard
you
pressed.
go. You can't sit back and wait. I don't know. I'm not in that position. I don't know what I would do, right? I would hope that I would do the right thing and charge, right?
I know there was one mother. I know there was one mother that was handcuffed.
Yeah,
She
we're gonna get
them out of the. Okay, I'm sorry.
We're gonna get there too.
The
But here's the thing with regards to this subject, you'll be hard pressed to find another community inside of this country that you cannot talk about. You cannot say anything other than praise to this community because you don't know what it's like. We have the most difficult job there is. Now we're not saying that. What we're saying is for a community that dedicates over 40 to 60% or some 40 to 60% of their funds
60%.
to police preparedness, police resources, why wasn't this department more prepared? Why was it between 1220 and 1250? And there were some reports that police officers went into the school and got their own kids out. Did anybody hear this?
I heard that.
I've heard it. I've not seen anything verified, though.
There's nothing official on that.
Okay,
so.
but in the meantime, between 12:20 and 12:50, which is 30 minutes, I presume, and this is why you said, hey, I'm sounding nice, because I would like to think that somebody was doing something right, that I think somebody was responsible and they had a protocol which required them not to rush in that building. I would just think that. I think that maybe they had a unit that was, okay, we're going to breach this door and we think we've targeted the gunman.
Says in the training, you go in.
So let's put the training aside and talk about individual philosophies on life. You had the 911 people in over Pennsylvania, and you had certain people on that plane who had a philosophy about life that said, I don't care if we die.
9/11.
Yeah.
9/11.
I'm sorry, 9/11.
No,
I don't care if we die.
Yeah.
We're going to stop this madness, and the plane
Yeah.
went down. I think you have good officers out there that say, and you have military personnel. These folks aren't drafted or forced to take these jobs. They want to serve and protect, and they go into these jobs knowing that they could put their lives on the line. And now we're starting to question: is everyone that's signing up to work in these fields truly ready to put their lives on the line?
Yeah.
Because it's starting to look, just looking in the mirror just a week back, that maybe not everyone is ready to put their lives on the line to serve the communities that they work for.
And I'm not saying the police that did this will come back to haunt me in some way, shape, or form.
Say it.
If I ever
No,
run for
say it.
something.
Because we got to be honest.
No. The cops, I'm not looking at them as bad. What they did to me was not, quote unquote, bad. It's not, they didn't shoot somebody, right? They didn't also stop somebody. So I'm not trying to lay blame and say these cops are bad. They don't deserve to be cops. What I'm saying is that they didn't follow their protocol, and they've shot other police in other places throughout the country have shot black and brown individuals and white individuals, but black and brown individuals.
But those are
on
systemic
much
problems,
less.
right? Because you talk about child protective services.
Correct.
Right? They didn't follow protocols. They didn't follow policies and procedures. And what happens? A child dies.
Right.
Right? Because there was a lapse of application of what they should have done.
Correct.
And so we're talking about systems. A child doesn't need to be shot to die.
Right.
And so we're having systemic failures.
So you're talking about the system as a whole is what you're saying, which goes back to the mentoring aspect of a lot of things as well, right?
I just think that, you got to wonder what's going through this. And he's, 18? So he's an adult, right? What's going through this young man's head, right? And what did he not get out of his head before he chose to act, right? Got to be able to, we've always talked about communication, right? That's what we've been talking about. You got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to let somebody know what's going on, because if you internalize it and you just leave it inside, then
and the tough part is for an
Literally.
adolescent or a child
Right,
that's in those critical developmental stages where they're supposed to be learning how to communicate.
True.
What we're finding more and more is that these shooters were isolated. Right? There were loners. Their only contact with the outside world was through some video game or through their cell phone. And how do we overcome that?
This young man apparently shot his grandmother before he went to the scene. This young man was in a household where people probably knew something was up. Now we've all been there, right? Where we've had family or friends and something's happening with their young people in their homes. Some of those individuals can be protective over their young people. They don't want, oh, that's just Johnny, man. He's just going through a phase. Or never mind Johnny. That's just how he is, right? And we're seeing more and more instances. Think about the young men that have gone and done these things where they had a love affair, affection with these guns, and they went and they've just shot people up at a movie theater, at a church, at a school with no remorse, right? Some of these people we talked about from law enforcement are buying these young men Burger King as they escort them to the jailhouse.
A few times, yeah.
Right? Things of that nature. Now, I guess the next question is, why do we have so many people, young people in Texas that have such a strong connection to guns?
Because their dads did, and their moms did, and their grandpas did, and their grandmothers did, and their uncles and aunts did, and their older brothers and sisters did.
Normalcy.
It's been normalized.
Right? It's norm.
I talked to somebody last week who talked about attending Lee High School back in the early 2000s and how it was no big deal to see pickup trucks parked in the student parking lot with gun racks inside the bed of the truck with rifles. And their point was, but you didn't see anybody grabbing their guns and shooting up the school.
And I grew up, went to Clark High School, went to UTSA. And in Texas, until recently, probably the last maybe 10 years, did I even cross my mind like, oh, because I used to be like, oh, this is Texas. Got a gun rack in the back. Good old boy. Now I'm like, what sticker do they have on the back of their truck? Right? Who are these people? Before you could just, it wasn't a big deal.
You chalked it up to being a Texas culture,
exactly.
right?
But now it's like, it feels like loose cannons. Like we have a lot of loose cannons running around. And for me, there's no real rhyme or reason for it. Right? But I remember, as you tell your kids, my mother always told me, not like you'd be my father in that age, because I'm probably close to your age, but we have to watch out for other people. And then how are we failing by moving out to the suburbs, right? How are we failing our communities by, we look at the Castro brothers, they came back to San Antonio, but how many bright young people are leaving and not coming back to the communities? Everybody in my neighborhood when I lived in Houston knew what I was doing, right? On our street particularly, I know. When I lived in San Antonio, my sister, who was 10 years younger than me, so at 6 or 7, started walking around the block with her girlfriend. And her girlfriend, they lived a good quarter mile away, maybe a little bit further. Where did that community, I'm saying where did that go? My mother the other night said it's still there, but it doesn't feel like we have that same community that we used to have. Just a feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, the feeling manifests in me having a gun in my purse in the very next room. The feeling manifests in me having a separate revolver next to my bed at home. I grew up with guns. My dad had guns all over the house. We were taught never to touch them.
Yeah.
I didn't own my own gun up until the last 5-6 years.
Yes, another 10 years. Something. There's a switch. Something happened. I don't know if it's quantifiable, but in my head, something happened. I'm thinking for the first time ever in my life to get a gun. And it's not even to really protect myself. It's much more to be ready in case something happens.
Drop a comment if you're watching this right now. Do you feel you need a gun?
Yeah, Mickey Sweet's on.
Do you feel you need a gun in your home? Perhaps that view has changed over the last couple of years. Your vision of a safe
and are
community.
those a solution?
Is it a solution? More guns?
Do you, Rosie? Is your gun because you feel scared, or you want to be prepared, or Is it just kind of like where you?
My journey with safety started when I was a CPS investigator in the late 80s. I had people I remember one case specifically where we had to use the SWAT team to go in and pick up the kids from a family that was holed up in a house with them. And between the time we picked up the kids and the time we went to court, those family members called the department and threatened my life. And so I had to get escorted into court by a deputy. And there have been multiple times when I represented individuals in court that were not happy with the results they were getting from court and focused on me as their own attorney. Or it was on the other side and blamed me for their loss of privileges or rights, and they would call and threaten me. And so it's more of a safety issue. But now it's metastasizing, and it's got a broader impact for me. Now we're talking about, do I have to carry it at the HEB?
Yeah.
Do I have to have it?
Because you don't know.
Because I don't know.
Nobody knows.
So I have it with me all the time. One piece, and the other piece stays,
threatened for doing your job, right?
Absolutely. I deal with defendants who have been charged with a violent offense. Where are they going to draw the line to their alleged violent behavior?
I have never owned a gun. I've shot a gun, killed a deer, killed a hog when I went hunting, but I've never owned a gun. I'm from Corpus Christi, didn't really fish. A lot of buddies fish, hunt. I was always on a football field, basketball court, baseball field. I just stayed busy. I wish I could go back and learn how to use a gun, right, properly, right, and be able to carry, but I don't know that I'd even want to carry a gun.
Well, in
now.
Texas, you don't need that.
Right.
In Texas
but
now.
I would learn. I want to learn proper.
Right, but in Texas, you need to learn more to get your driver's license.
Yeah.
Than you do to use a gun.
It's not even learn.
True.
You
It's
don't
just
have
to
to
apply.
learn.
You just need to know how to pull a trigger.
You don't even have to apply for a gun.
But I'm just
You take
talking
the
about
class.
me personally.
Sure.
I would
You
want
just go buy the
want to
gun.
learn
Yeah.
the proper way to carry, the proper way to aim, the proper way
Correct.
to shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
The proper time to use
I
it.
do, yeah, proper time to use it.
Yeah, the fact
it's
if you
about-
pull a gun, you better be ready to use a gun.
Yes, most definitely.
And to what Maximo was saying, we have constitutional carry in Texas now, which means you go get a gun. You don't have to you don't have to register the gun. You don't have to learn how to use the gun. If it's a private sale.
And it's open carry.
And it's open carry.
Well, one of the things is it's unfortunate, I can't even develop the right words. I'm typically not a loss for words, but as we're watching these young people's images scroll down their names, you have pictures of their first communion, you have pictures of their they're in their church,
yeah.
They're graduating from kindergarten, their birthday
kids.
parties. Man, these kids didn't know nothing about guns.
Many of them had been given awards that morning at their end of the year award ceremony.
These kids had their whole lives ahead of them, and it's gone now. Their families
will never be the same. The community will never be the same again.
No, it's more than sad.
And we got to think of ways to heal who's left behind.
Yeah.
And that includes their classmates, their teachers, their families. Because if we don't find a way for them to, overcome it and learn how to live with it, they're never going to get over it. Okay? That's just a false view of things. People don't get over this. Yeah. You have to teach them how to navigate and modulate those feelings that are very raw and very real. Otherwise, those very people are going to end up manifesting those behaviors in ways that may get them most likely in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we talk about we live in a society where this is commonplace, where we become desensitized. There was a shooting at Parkland High School that happened a couple of years ago. Many of the kids who were survivors who were at the school that this happened have become advocates for gun reform. Some of those kids have had their lives threatened just the same. On social media, people have followed them, people have tracked them down or come to places where they've given speeches and said, hey, we're going to kill you because of what they've been adding for change. Now, with that being said, we have people that are quote unquote elected officials who essentially are refusing to do anything about this. they come on TV, they come on social media time and time again, and they say we want to offer our thoughts and prayers to the victims, to this horrible, senseless tragedy.
And because we've allowed them to keep saying that.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is no one can buy our vote. They are pandering to people and organizations that fund their campaigns to keep them in the positions that they can so that the capitalist interests continue to make more and more money. And what we fail to realize and understand, and we've lost sight of the fact that our vote means something.
Oh, sure.
And we become complacent and we become apathetic about what our vote could do to change the way in which we live our lives. And they can only stay in those positions because we've allowed them to stay in those positions by not getting out to vote and vote for people that truly reflect the values of our communities.
I hear you and I agree with you. You know, I've been on the campaign trail, worked for a county commissioner, ran his website, raised money, like worked in the system, right? My mother at 72 years old now, she's working polls up in the New Bandera area, right? So this is something that is near and dear to my heart. But I keep on hearing this values thing, right? And it almost feels like we're taking it from another side of the aisle, because my values are really, really simple. Don't be a dick. Be a good human. For me, that's my values. And this whole values thing, if you're part of the LGBTQ community, you deserve the same civil rights as somebody who's black, period. And I don't even know if that's a value. That's just like human being 101. And I hear
you were taught that too, though, right?
Oh,
you
man.
were raised that way.
My father
right,
was,
as I was.
Sure, my father's,
probably
yeah.
everybody in this room was, but some of our kids are raising themselves, right? They don't
Well,
know what to think. They don't have values.
we're not even talking about kids. We're talking about the adults.
True. And adults too.
The
right?
adults.
You know.
Yeah, but sociology will tell you every adult has a very unique value system.
Yeah,
And our values are as unique as our DNA. And value is what we hold important in our lives. And your values are going to be different than mine, and our values are going to be different from the other side of the aisle. But that doesn't prevent them from calling them values as well.
But do you think that's a pre-programmed thing? Do you think that's a propaganda thing more than, yes, values are different, but if you said, most people you ask, do you want to die today or do you want to live tomorrow? Most people say, I want to live tomorrow, right? That's universal. Now, are you okay with kids dying because you want your Second Amendment
So then it
protected?
turns into, how do you want to live tomorrow? What kind of life do you want to get up and live tomorrow?
Right.
Do you want to live in a world in which our children can be obliterated off the face of this earth in a matter of seconds? Or do you want to live in a world where we give importance and reverence to young lives and how much they can add to our community and our society?
Well, some people do. It's just before they're born.
Well,
once they're born, it's over.
But here's the thing. We are actually living in a time where people will say we want to live in a community where kids can get obliterated off the face of the earth in a matter of seconds, so long as you don't infringe on my rights.
But they don't.
That's what people are saying.
They're saying that, but I don't even think they really want that.
I don't even think they know what they're talking about either. But people are still saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why someone created the ad in the San Antonio Express News, whatever newspaper it was in, to go buy your goods right under. And I think that probably went viral.
So what happened on that article? I spend way too much time deep researching stuff when I see it. Is the article so
The ad was
Express
purchased
News-
before
Right.
the event
That's what they
happened.
said.
the
Okay,
Express News said.
which could be true.
So then the argument becomes, why even sell that type of ad?
Period.
You know,
Now, would you be okay?
But
With the ad of the Sasset gun show? Would you be okay with them selling a Sasset gun show ad? Have you seen that? It's
I have.
Texas backwards.
It's on billboards, but we go
Yeah.
back to how we started this conversation, which is we have an ability to control those types of ads that will lead to the death of people. And they did it with cigarettes. Seems innocuous. Why not do it with guns?
And I think it's because, this country has such an affinity with guns that they're so attached to them that they believe that these are going to be the things that save me one day. When the government comes for me, when the radical left comes for me, that I will have these guns to protect my home. They believe in this fantasy and this fairy tale of Davy Crockett and the Wild West. And America was a revolutionary country founded in 1776 because of patriots like me that stood by their arms and allowed us to fight for our freedoms.
And who are they fighting? The Native Americans, the indigenous people, obliterating them with those weapons. And that's the whitewashing of our history. And unless you come from that type of history, like myself, I've got cousins on Oklahoma reservations, but I'm a mutt. You know, my 23andMe showed me that. I'm Spanish, I'm Portuguese, I'm Eskenazi Jew, I'm Native American. And, you know, we're a melting pot, and people either have to realize that, or they're going to continue to function on this premise, false premise, that we were a white Christian country, and that's how they want to keep it.
And that's the thing. People want it to be a white Christian nation. And look what they're doing. They're voting for these people. They're not doing anything about these shootings. You know, look at the state of the country that it's in right now in terms of
But why
mental
are we
health.
there when we are a majority state?
Well, we've got. I think so. I had a question with a young man who does a lot of work around voting rights and getting people out there to vote. And I mentioned to him, you know, I said something like, yeah, you know, Texas is a red state. I said something like that. He says, no, Texas is a non-voting state.
Correct.
And so what's it going to take to get our people to get out there and vote?
That's the question.
And so what's the solution, Manuel?
I just think people need to
because we got a lot of issues,
complaining, right?
So,
and get out there and vote.
But here's the
if
thing:
you don't go out and vote, you should.
So
complain. Then
we're
right?
in the schools though. We're dealing with 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old young people. How are we preparing these students to get out there and get engaged civically to say, you know what, my vote matters? Not only that, I can go serve on a board when I hit a certain age. I can be involved. I can volunteer.
But that goes back to his point where we need to mentor those young people and teach them the ways of the world. Teach them the ways of being a servant, a public servant. And this is how you do it. You start at a very young age, like my mom started with me and my brother, which was you start with volunteering to feed the hungry. You know, at the age of 8 and 9, you volunteer to go pick up trash at the park. You you do fundraisers for your student council, your Kiwanis club or your Key club to help people that have less than you. And so it's a way of how you create a philosophy among these young people, and you start to teach them. And when I was in high school, we used to bring in the voting machines with the levers, and we would have mock elections on our high school campus to show what our young people may have done had they had the power to vote.
Civic engagement can start as early as elementary. They vote at the elementary level on what it is that they want, right? Specific snacks or whatnot. Junior high, the same the same way with student council, right? It's just got to be more of a emphasis on it. High school, the same way when you're voting.
Yeah, young people don't know what civic engagement is until you teach it to them.
And these 18-year-olds, when they're graduating from high school, have to understand that they have a responsibility, right, to serve their community because
and they have a voice.
Vote. They have a voice. They can go out and vote. Like I tell high school students, when you turn 18, you have a voice. You can go and vote. You
can do a lot of things, yeah.
You can do a lot of things, right? You're an adult. You make decisions as an adult. There are consequences. But you as an adult also have the power, right, to vote, which is powerful, right? You are contributing to the community, contributing to society, right? As Judd stated earlier, we're separate, right? We're on both sides of the aisle. We need to come together. And how do we come together? By communicating, right? We don't all agree on everything, right? But we got to communicate and talk about agreeing or agreeing to disagree, right? It's all about communication.
And so just on the same note, there is somebody inevitably watching this. Someone will perhaps watch the replay and say, oh, so-and-so, whomever it may be, maybe it's me, maybe it's Beto, maybe it's anybody, is coming to try to take your guns. Look, I don't want your guns. I don't need your guns. Ain't nobody, I'm not trying to come and take anybody's guns, okay? And so why is the narrative immediately have to go to, oh, someone's trying to take our guns?
Because it's fear-driven.
It's
False
fear-driven.
evidence appearing
So,
real.
so why are you so afraid? What are you so afraid of? if you're watching this. Are you afraid of these kids? These kids didn't deserve that.
Well, then
Who are you afraid of?
Well, who's going to take your guns, first of all?
They believe the government is going to come take their guns.
Okay, hold up. Let's just get really real here for a second. Who is going to take your guns? Who? Your police officer?
They'll have somebody,
down the
some
street?
special force come in.
What special
They're
force
gonna
is
reference Germany. They're gonna reference Hitler,
force?
Jewish. That's what they're gonna reference.
Special force is going to take 400 million guns.
And let's differentiate here. You know, I have a handgun with a clip in it in my purse. I have a revolver at the house. I don't have an AK.
Yeah, last I checked, you don't need an AK-47 to go kill a deer.
No.
I don't. I'm not an
So
expert. though.
let's differentiate. Why are we allowing those types of weapons to be sold to the masses?
Correct.
What's
Second
the
Amendment.
need for that?
Second Amendment.
What's the need
Yeah,
for that?
but you're absolutely right. Let's talk about that. Why do we feel that we need an automatic assault rifle that can kill hundreds of people within minutes, seconds, versus a revolver, a pistol?
Because we are America, and America got big guns.
So-
but listen, our society is predicated on violence.
Well, the other thing about it too is bigger, better.
Movie. No, it's not. In my head, it's not so difficult. In movies, it is the good guy with the gun, whether it's John Wayne,
The hero.
or
The hero.
Yeah, the hero complex. It's not real. I don't think, and we were talking, and I don't think I would ever want to see those young people's pictures. And I don't think it would do, I think it would do good in some way, shape, or form for people to actually see what that does. I don't think people see what that does.
Well, and then there's also the knowledge that unless it happens to you, you're not going to care.
And that's the thing too. So last week when this occurred, I had a real conversation with another parent. His son and my son are the same age, and I talked about. I said, you know, it was last Thursday we were talking. This incident happened on Tuesday. We were saying I was telling him I was at my place of employment and I saw on the TV, you know, the headline was a shooting, and you think in your head, man, here goes another shooting, right? I mean, what can you even say at this point? You think, oh, it's just another shooting. And then I went about my day, right? Because I got to work. I'm on the job. I'm on the clock. I've got to continue along with my business, right? But then I started thinking, what if on that little ticker, I saw my son's school? What if this brother that I was talking to saw his son's school? Imagine how everything would have just shifted. And it wouldn't have been, oh, it's just another shooting. Because this is happening all over.
We're becoming desensitized and it's becoming normalized. That's the problem that you experienced last week. Mm-hmm. Because unless it's happening to you, then we compartmentalize it so that we can continue with our day.
I have the same thought go through my head at my son's school, at his high school, right? What if that would have happened at our high school, right? And have a conversation with him about, well, why do people have guns in the first place, right? Well, you go hunt or you have it for protection. But if you look at how many murders occur with somebody actually protecting themselves versus somebody just going out and killing people randomly, right? I mean, I don't know. I know I've got neighbors, right, that swear by their guns and nobody's taking your guns or nobody's going to come and take my guns. Just like you said, nobody's going to take. Can't. There's no possible way.
But take 400 million guns.
Why do you?
There's no country that I know of that just confiscated the guns. You have gun buybacks, you have gun givebacks, but you
have regulations of types of guns. Canada's moving toward getting rid of all assault weapons. You know.
So if that is the case, then what happens? There's a level of ignorance around a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
And the biggest part for me is who is going to do it. Is it going to be the police? The police are not going to go take everybody's guns. You think you're going to strap up the military to go door to door and take everybody's guns?
Well, let's look at about the fear tactics that they use around COVID. They said, oh, the government's going to implant you with their vaccine. The vaccine has, I mean, you heard all this stuff, right? Chips. They were going to insert chips in you. They were going to force you.
With my hand with nothing else.
It's the same sort of deal, though. But it's the same sort of deal. They said, oh, the government's, they've been planning this for years.
It's propaganda. It's misinformation. And unfortunately, it's the individuals who are, in my opinion, feeble-minded, intellectually deficient, that buy into this immediately without giving a second thought to the possibility that the information is hokey. They just want to get spoon-fed information, regardless of whether it's grounded in science and data and accurate information, and they would rather be told by someone else what to believe. It's easier to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, 9 out of 10 doctors say flossing's good for you. But hey, that one doctor, let me bring him on to have a podcast with the one doctor that says it's not going to work. Like, I'm trying to figure out where education became a bad thing, right? And that's the very interesting thing. We hear about elites. These elites are going to take your guns. Damn it, Ted Cruz, you're an elite. Your wife works for Goldman Sachs. He went to Yale, Harvard, or whatever else.
He clerked at the Supreme Court.
He lives in a gated community. Who are these elites people are talking about? It's
propaganda.
It's
word magic.
Yeah, it's maddening.
So it's interesting because I thought maybe to myself, what if this shooting happened at Ted Cruz's kids' school? What if it happened at Greg Abbott's kids' school? Would have the outcome or their thoughts and prayers or just the same old thing been on repeat? Would that have happened again? Would that have happened this time? And then I started to think, there was a shooting that happened to a prominent Republican out in D.C. while they were playing a softball game. You all probably remember this.
I remember him, yes.
The gentleman was shot. He wasn't killed. Is that correct?
Correct.
The gentleman still has had the same position after the fact that they won't vote on anything against gun rights or anything gun reform, I should say, because of politics. They want to keep that seat. Because the minute they start saying, okay, we're going to make some changes, Ted Cruz comes out and says, hey, I'm open to gun reform. You're going to get someone who's further radical on the right to say, listen, even Ted Cruz is going to come take your guns now. Elect me and I'll protect your rights.
There's still more sane people that are not voting that could vote
True.
to make this the America we all deserve.
I'm right with you on that. So one of the solutions that we have to talk about, folks, is we've got to get out there and vote.
Absolutely.
We've got to get out there and vote on a local level. We've got to get out there and just vote, be heard, get to city council, write
good
your
friend
senators.
of mine, mentor, former elected official Charlie Gonzalez used to say, all politics is local. Quit thinking that your vote's going to impact something in D.C. on the Hill. It's not. But if the person you send from here, from this congressional district, from this zip code, from this county, is someone that you elect because you believe they're going to push for your values, what you believe in, and what you think is important, that's totally different. Yeah. And on the more local level, it's who you put there at city council and on the commissioner's court that's going to determine how fast the EMS gets to your house. That's going to determine how quickly your sidewalks are repaired. That's going to determine how quickly those potholes are going to be taken care of. That's going to make sure that lamppost light is repaired so that you have a safe street at night, that traffic light is maintained, that we have flood control. That's why it's important for us to vote, because our quality of life depends on it.
Absolutely.
Got to come together on that. Right?
And that's the thing.
4 of us in here that agree. We got to get 4 more and then get 4 more and then get 4 more.
You're right. And part of what I like to do is speak from a standpoint where we call everyone into the table, because the minute someone gets offended, minute someone looks at this and says, man, this guy's completely biased in his thought patterns, is the minute someone's going to go out and vote for someone who does completely the opposite. They're going to say, hey, screw this guy. I'm going to fix this guy with my vote.
But I can't be everybody to everything.
No, you can't.
And either you stand for something or you fall for everything.
But here's part of the problem, though.
So I can unify people around what's important. Don't be a dick, right? But if you choose to vote for a group that might not be racist, but they're okay with racist, do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, I know what you're saying.
There's a saying in Spanish: "Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres."
Someone's going to have to start making some different choices. No, you're right.
What's that
You
saying?
tell me who you surround yourself with, and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is like, yes, I want to bring everybody to the table. There's a gun activist that I've been asked to get on the podcast. And so we're going to try to have him on next week.
Let's get him on.
What I'm telling you, man, if this dude sits there and is like, well, I don't know what my reaction will be, because I'm thinking to myself, but wait a minute, like, are you watching the same thing that I am seeing?
I think they look at it from a different standpoint.
38 people killed. I'm sorry, shot. 22 killed. What are you thinking? So more guns, it already showed that more guns do not help. So what is the next thing? So as we talk about solutions, I'm all about freezing every gun that we have right now. I'm okay with that. Freeze every gun, and the only way you can get a gun from here on is by having a background check and maybe even a psych evaluation.
What about raising the age limits?
See, that would be 25. If it was me, it'd be 25 for women and probably 36 for men.
Guilan for mayor.
It would be probably, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
It'd probably be 36 for men. I mean,
What do you say
really,
to military enlistees who are given a weapon the minute they arrive at basic camp, basic training?
I mean, do we really want to talk about how some of these shootings were on military bases? Do we want to talk about how some of these shootings have been cops that have been in the military? We have a problem in this country, and it's not just mental health. It's sick. Something is wrong.
Something is definitely wrong.
And
here's
nobody
part of the
to
problem.
talk about what could be wrong, especially with our young men in this.
But here's part of the problem. Particularly, listen, we're here in Texas, folks. We know the culture. You mentioned you live by a ethos. Very simple. Don't be a dick. There are just as many people, if not more, that live by an ethos that's don't tread on me, or wait a minute, come and take it. How many bumper stickers, how many flags have you seen? How many people with shirts that live by that saying right there in Texas?
Yeah.
It's all rooted back to the Alamo,
It
whole
is.
false premise in itself.
False.
But they want it to be true.
That's a whole nother
they
podcast.
want it, this American myth. This American myth of exceptionalism, and we're the land of the free, the home of the brave. They want that to be true, and they want it just for them. They want this. Who's
they?
These folks that don't tread on me. These folks
Not
that
us.
love.
Not
These
us.
folks
They.
that go out and
Not
vote.
us.
You know,
a good
what
t-shirt.
is it? What is the land of the free, the home of the brave, the Star Spangled Banner words, right? Justice and freedom for all of these things. They want that to be true.
And it's so weird because there was a San Francisco coach who said, "I'm not happy with what America's doing right now, and I'm going to stay in the dugout." Right? He got razzed. So Memorial Day, it was like, all right, cool. You know what I'm saying? Memorial Day, they're like, yeah, come on in. You know, or he was basically like, I'm going to stand during Memorial Day. It's crazy right now, the thought process around everything. You can't protest. You can't take a knee to protest.
No, you can't do nothing.
You can't stand in the dugout to
You
protest.
can't talk. You can't question nothing.
Somebody's going to say something. Well, I think people need to stop looking at TikTok as like the ethos for what's going on in this country too. And you got to go to your neighbor, right?
Social media, right?
Yeah, you got to go to somebody and talk to them.
Let's get real with real people.
Yeah, let's talk about social media bots as well, because some of the stuff you're seeing, folks, on social media is not real. We've got fake accounts being created. We got propaganda
Let me
being
put
pushed.
none of social media is real.
That too.
It happens in a remote space, an electronic space that we watch over a screen. This is the Jetsons, right? I mean, real is what we're doing here. You're a real person, you know, and we're having this conversation, and you're a human sitting within feet from me. That's real. Something on a screen, I can't justify that as being real.
I depending on what it is, right? Solution, right? Every time I look over the TV, it's hard because I see the names scrolling through and I see the faces.
And you know, it's
like, what are we doing?
Well,
And what is the
tonight we can't solve it all in 1 hour,
no, we
right?
can't. We can't.
And what we can do is, as individuals, commit to being that change in the world tonight and tomorrow, and making sure that we model and mentor for our youth what should be important for them to lead productive, happy lives, and what they need to get there.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we're going to leave this world a better place than any of us entered into.
Yeah.
Responsible or being irresponsible, right?
Yeah.
Or versus irresponsible.
And
right?
I think we're all doing it in our own little strange way, right? You know, you mentor, you're a judge. I actually said, hell, I'm just going to build a table and have my own studio and produce my own content so we can have conversations like this. And they don't have to be based on anger or fear. They can be real conversations with real people. Maximo does motivational speaking. He works with college students. He brings all these people together. So I think the four of us, we do it. I think we vote. It's just touching.
But we have to have more
person.
conversations like this.
We do.
And we don't have to relegate ourselves to your table and this podcast,
Right.
but open it up to community conversations.
Exactly.
Where we go to the campuses that Mr. Maldonado mentors at, where we go to the venues that Maximo does motivational speaking at, where we go and have a mobile podcast, right? Out of a food truck that goes all over the county. And
That's on the way.
you know, today we're doing it from the north side. Tomorrow, next month, we're going to do it from the east side. And we go, if the community can't come to us, let's go to the community and give them a platform to communicate, to talk, to process, to vent.
And let me say this, and I need to go to the booth to start wrapping up, and we'll get 5 minutes after this. We have to be careful, and I want everybody to be heard, but we have to agree on facts.
Absolutely.
Right? Everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but not everybody is entitled to their own facts. And we have to start agreeing on facts. And if 9 dentists say flossing is okay and 1 says not, you got to kind of go with the 9 because you think more guns is okay and you don't want to go with against the more guns. So there has to be balance. We can't just agree with whatever the hell we want to agree on, right? So I think we have to agree on facts. And I've even invited people in. I said, hey, okay, let's have a debate. But we're going to have 3 sites that we're going to agree on that we're going to fact check each other on, right? And when we have those 3 sites, then we can talk. Because otherwise, the conversation is all over the place.
It is. It gets all over. You know, one of the things that we talked about earlier is, you know, what if this happened at my kid's school? Well, there's 20 sets of parents that are having that conversation that it was their kid's school, and it's happened at multiple schools. Something is wrong, folks. We've got to do something. I don't know what it is, whether it's continuing to have these sorts of discussions, whether it's getting out and vote. It's got to be all the things. The other thing is that we got to start loving each other. We got to start recognizing that when you hurt, I hurt. And that kid that went in there and shot that school up, man, that was our kid. That was our kid too. We
got to remember the multiple golden rules. And when you want to go to biblical quotes, right, or biblical stories, you remember that Christ, as a young man, went into the temple and flipped the tables in anger. He went against the establishment. We got to remember that the Bible tells us, if you want to quote the Bible, that what you do to the least of my brethren, you do to me. You know, and there's certain ways of living, and people cherry pick, right, out of this book that's been rewritten and re-edited for thousands of years to promote their personal agenda. And we got to go back to what Guy said. Just don't be a dick, and love your fellow man, and do what's right, and be and embrace the humanity in each of us, and know that people are hurting, and we got to stop the pain. We got to find our way back into stopping the hurt, the trauma, and the pain.
Yeah.
I know we have, as adults, sat and talked about this topic, which, you know, you had a 18-year-old commit this heinous crime, right? In speaking with high school students, why? What do you think was going on, right? I think we have to get out to them, right? And figure out how can we help you, right? Whenever you're faced with an adverse situation, when something traumatic happens to you, right? We need to be able to provide services to these, and I say youngsters because I'm 53, and these guys are 15, 16, 17, 18.
That's okay. I
right?
get you.
You know what I mean? I say youngsters because we need to be able to hear them.
Yeah,
right?
that's the other thing too. We
Like,
can't
you
just be going and
see
talking
me?
and lecturing
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah, that's
No,
what I
it's not
said.
about that.
We need to be able to be for them at their age what we needed at their age.
Exactly.
I would be heartbroken, just like everyone else is, if we have this incident, another one of these incidents happen tomorrow.
Well, it's going to be like the little girl that was interviewed said, it's going to happen again until we get the courage and the commitment mustered up to stop it. And it starts at the voting booth. It starts at, We may have to take to the streets. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take, but we can definitely start at the voting booth in November.
Voting is an absolute, folks. If you're watching this right now, if you're considering what you can do to make change in your community and beyond, it has to be set the date, do what you need to do. If you need to ride, all that stuff.
November 8th, 2022.
You've got to get out there and vote and be heard, because we've got to do something. This is maddening beyond belief. We cannot allow this to continue to happen in our society. This is the only country that it happens in and day out. It doesn't happen in every other country throughout the world, and it's we've got to do something. We don't have to live this way. And it's heartbreaking. We are getting ready to close the show. We wanted to dedicate this show to talking about solutions to the victims, to the families. Uvalde Strong hashtag, to all the families that are grieving. Man, I'm so sorry. We're with you. Change has got to be on the horizon, folks. Get out there and do something for these families that have been affected by this.
What we can do is do what we can so that not another family loses their future, their children.
Absolutely. So we're going to go around. We're going to give some closing thoughts as we're winding down here on the show. It's been a great Tuesday. I appreciate y'all coming in and sharing some thoughts on such a difficult subject. Manuel, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Give us some closing words, man. Anything you may be feeling.
Ever since this happened, right? First and foremost, thinking about my own children, my nieces, nephews, and then the students that I serve, right? We have to continue to build relationships, not just with high school students, middle school, elementary. You've got college students that need support, that need mentoring. We have to come together as a community right here in the 210, if you will, together as adults, as professionals, to just listen to some of these youngsters and what they have to say, like what's going on in your world, right? Because as you stated with social media, much of it's not real, but this is what our youngsters are seeing every second of the day, from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, right? These images in their head. Listen, support, advocate for, right? Teach them self-advocacy for themselves, right? To reach out, to get help if they need help, right? Because there's nothing wrong with asking for help if you need help. Just continue to support our youngsters, not only in the education system, but more importantly, social, right? Emotional. Just help support our youth, right? So that whenever they do have issues, they know how to deal with those issues in a healthy way, right? Which is through communication. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Rosie, has been fantastic having you on. We wanted to have you on. We were lucky to grab you tonight. We appreciate you coming, bringing the fire, dropping the facts, as always. You've got a lot going on, busy person, so we appreciate you making the time this evening. Let's get some closing words from you. I don't know if you also want to share a few thoughts on an update with the flag situation that's ongoing. But many people have heard of you without even knowing about you, for all of our viewers nationwide based on this incident. But I don't want to take you down that road. I want to hear some closing thoughts from you tonight.
For these families, nothing will bring back that splendor in the grass for them. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do for them what wasn't done before, and that's to muster up the courage to create and effect true change in how we keep our children safe, how we can move toward avoiding another catastrophic mass shooting. How do we get to that place? And it's going to have to come through leadership, and the current leadership isn't doing it. So we have to commit to changing that leadership and putting people in place that will commit to making our community safer and making our lives better and creating a world for our future generations that will leave this world a better place than when we came into it.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe here at VOD Pod Media. We'll be back with you next week. Make sure you're checking us out week in and week out. We're making stuff happen at this table and beyond, and we're sending everyone the best vibes. We hope you have a fantastic night. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.